Hey guys, it's your cool rich Aunt Jessie, and I am here to go in more detail about Joe Biden's student loan plan. I did in a previous video Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, and Trump's student loan plans for the 2020 election, but we all know now that Bernie Sanders is out and it's now just between Joe Biden and Trump. So I wanted to do a little bit more in-depth explanation about Joe Biden's student loan plan. All right, guys, so here it is. Joe Biden's plan includes a couple key points, which I'll go over briefly, and then I'm going to go back and go a little bit more in depth about each one. So the first thing is that he says he would simplify income-based repayment plans. Instead of having, 10 different options like there are now, he would basically get rid of all of those and have one central income-based plan, and it would lower the payments for everybody on that plan. The biggest thing that is in his plan is that he supports forgiveness for community service. So basically, he would eliminate the public service loan forgiveness program, which is the forgiveness that is offered to government workers and service type of jobs. And he would replace that with forgiveness for anybody who's willing to do community service or national service. So you can get up to $10,000 a year in forgiveness for up to 5 years. So $50,000 of forgiveness for everybody that does community service or national service. He also supports getting student loans dischargeable with bankruptcy. So right now it's nearly impossible for student loans to be discharged with bankruptcy. He wants to make it a little bit easier. His plan also includes having students automatically enrolled in income-based plans when they graduate, so it's not something you would have to call and request. You're just automatically in that program. And then he also supports having 2 years of free community college for everybody. So lots of things to dive into here. One more thing, he supports more Pell Grant money to make it easier, accessible to more people. So I'm going to go into depth in a little bit more detail about each one here, and hopefully this will make it easier for you to make a choice in this upcoming election. All right, first let's dive into his new income-based plan. So this is going to be the biggest change, I think, for most people right away, is the income-based plan that he suggests to replace all of the other ones with. Right now, all of the income-based plans, which there's like 5 or 6 different ones, they all have a formula for your monthly payment. And it is 10% all the way up to 15% of your discretionary income. You can find your discretionary income by taking 150% of the poverty guideline for your state. So let's say if for Pennsylvania, for example, the poverty guideline, the poverty standard is $18,000 a year. You would do 150% of that number, and then you would subtract that from your income. Whatever is left over is considered your discretionary income. And on the current plan, 10% of that would be your monthly payment. It's a little confusing, but there's a lot of information about it online if you need to get the exact calculations. But with Joe Biden's plan, that percentage would go down to 5%. So everybody would pay just 5% of that discretionary income, and only if they make more than $25,000 a year. If you make $25,000 a year or less, your payment would actually be $0 with no interest accumulation. So that's a really big deal as well. The fact that you can just kind of put them on pause, not by using forbearance time, not adding up interest, just simply you don't have to pay your student loans until you start making decent money. Not, that these days $26,000 is really enough to get by, but it at least allows you to not have to have that pressure if you're not working or you haven't found your exact career yet or you're not making a ton of money, to have to be making those huge payments on your student loans. In comparison, guys, right now, if you make very little income, you could technically have a $0 payment the way that it is now, but the interest does accumulate. So essentially your balance is going up every month or every year, even though you're technically on time with your $0 payment or your $20 payment or whatever it is. So this would be a big change, the fact that borrowers could have a $0 payment while they're not making money and not have to worry about that balance going up and skyrocketing. The other big thing in his student loan reform plan, it's not quite Bernie's, forgive all of the student loans, but he does make it a lot easier for pretty much anybody to get student loan forgiveness if they're willing to do it. The way that it stands right now, there are a bunch of different forgiveness options, and I made a video about that, but they're pretty limited. You have to be, it's very specific. You have to be injured and can't work. You have to be sick. You have to be in a public service position for the government specifically, or in a service job, or your school had to shut down or something like that. They're very specific. Joe Biden's student loan plan forgiveness includes anybody who does community service or national service, and that can include prior service. So it isn't quite detailed yet exactly what would count for community service and national service, but I imagine that this plan is going to be very broad and include a lot of different types of service that almost anybody could do if they have the time. You're allowed to do up to 5 years of community service and get $10,000 a year of forgiveness. So somebody could potentially get $50,000 in student loan forgiveness. So one of the other things he would change is making student loans easier to discharge with bankruptcy. So currently student loans can be discharged with bankruptcy, but it's very hard. You have to prove in front of a judge that the student loans are causing you undue hardship, and it could be pretty tough to prove that, considering that federal student loans offer a lot of different payment options, even a $0 payment. So if your income is low, they can do an income-based plan and have you on a $0 payment or a very low payment. They have deferments, they have forbearances. So to get the entire thing just completely erased is nearly impossible. So he is going to loosen those standards and make it a little easier. Not sure how easier, but we will see. He also supports 2 years of free community college. So this is kind of a step in Bernie's direction. He wanted free college for everybody, no matter what kind of school it was, for the entire time. But Joe Biden is more conservative in saying 2 years of free community college for everybody. So far, we haven't seen any stipulations on that, like certain GPAs and things like that, which I've seen in the past in different plans, but that should roll out as we get closer to the election. Joe Biden also has a plan to make income-based repayment automatic. So right now, when students graduate, they get a 6-month grace period where they don't have to make any payments. And then after the 6 months, they'll start getting those first payments due. And you're automatically enrolled right now in just a standard repayment plan, which is 10 years of one set payment. So the payments are usually pretty high. I think when I first graduated, they wanted like $1,000 a month, and at that time that was definitely impossible. So it will be nice for borrowers to be automatically enrolled in that, I think, because oftentimes when you're brand new out of school and trying to find a career, you still really have no clue about these student loans and how much you owe and how they work, and it's always kind of a shocker, I think, for most borrowers when they all finally become due and you realize kind of what you got yourself into. So it will be nice that this will be an automatic program. Joe Biden also supports getting more Pell Grant money for borrowers. Right now, that's money that does not need to be paid back, that the government gives out typically to the financially needy. It goes up slightly each year. Right now, it's at about $6,000 a year, which doesn't really cost or cover too many costs these days. $6,000 a year is like book money for a lot of these colleges. So to increase that and to give it to more people will definitely help out with these soaring higher education costs. Joe Biden plans to do all of this by closing a tax loophole for inherited property and by capping itemized deductions for the wealthy. So it will affect less people than Bernie's plan. So that's kind of all for Joe Biden's plan. It's not as radical as some of the other plans that we've heard, but this is definitely more than what Trump is proposing for his student loan reform if he is reelected. And I will make another video getting more in depth about his plan. So if you guys learned something, give a thumbs up. If you have any questions, leave it below in the comments, or also shoot me an email. I'm available to do one-on-one consultations. If you have questions about your own student loans, I do one-on-one consultations for a small fee of $35. Email me at jessie.seren@gmail.com. And as always, thanks, guys.